to the Self-Made Book channel. I'm Bianca.
And I'm Byron.
And today we are joined by the lovely Louise Macfarlane, who is a relationship coach. And also she helps a lot of women really deal with some of the issues that they're facing too. So we're going to dig deeper. We're going to ask her some questions about how to have a better relationship. But before we do that, Louise, welcome. Could you give us a little bit of background about you and what led you to becoming a coach?
Yeah, sure, of course. Thank you for the kind invitation. Really is, I think my story begins very much at my life was great. I lived in a beautiful part of the country on the beach with lots of freedom. I went to a great school, had lots of friends, and our house was always filled with fun and laughter, and you couldn't really fault it. But then at the age of 8, I had to kind of keep a secret. So I kind of withdrew into myself and started to be very silent. 4 years later, as some young girls do, we have sort of menstrual cycles and all the discomfort with that. So I was allowed a day off school, yay! But unfortunately, the next morning it was, no, we're leaving your father, Louise. We need to pack up the house and we're going. But the next day I returned to school and it was like everything else just carried on as normal round about me. 3 years after that, my father passed away in a very tragic accident, and I just was sad, devastated, guilty because I hadn't really seen him very much. Again, a day off school and then back to school, and everything round about me carried on as normal. And then the final straw was when I left to go to college, because that was the kind of push off, you go to college and get your own independence. I was very close to my mother and I was very reluctant to want to leave home at that time. But she was getting remarried, and so I was reassured that she wasn't going to be alone. And just the day after the marriage, I was on my way back to college and I just thought, I can't deal with this anymore. The pain was just too much. You know, just the abandonment and the rejection that I'd felt over the previous 9-10 years, that I just was, I don't want people to see me suffer. You know, I actually probably thought it was actually contagious. Don't hang around me or you'll end up as miserable as I am. So I actually pushed people away and suddenly just delved into, let's find adventure, let's find fun, let's put this facade on that I was really happy and excited and I was doing well. But really inside, everything was just, I was alone. I was overwhelmed with trying to do too much to kind of impress people. And I was broke because I was just spending more money than I could earn to put on this lifestyle that I wanted people to see that I was okay. And it wasn't the case. So in 2003, I decided to take my gap year, and it was 7 years of traveling in South America, living in South America, loving the work that I was doing, which was helping people. And that's where I started my self-exploration, just to discover what had been going on for me. It was painful to face my fears. It was challenging to kind of step out of my comfort zone. But that was transformational for me. That has just then took me into finding coaching courses to help people, as well as myself, but help people find their purpose, to help them find the relationships, that loving and lasting relationship that we all desire, but we just think there's nobody out there for me. And really to just feel as a woman that I've got more to offer, and to step out of what I was feeling as an imposter, to actually become a leader in the community or to the women that I want to serve. So that's it in short.
Wow. Very, very deep. So thank you for sharing it with us. So I guess in this current time, in terms of part of your expertise being a relationship coach, you know, everyone is at home with their partners, I guess, right? Which is good, bad, and indifferent, depending on which side of the coin you're on and your relationship with your partner. So I just want to get into, like, first of all, in kind of a, I guess, so the question is, with people currently being isolated at home, due to the current, pandemic, relationships will be strained, I guess. It would be a fair thing to say. So what are your top tips for surviving this pandemic with your partner, if there are any at all?
It's an absolute great question. I think we're all feeling, and I just feel one of the things is actually to get a really good understanding of the differences between, you can do it on gender basis, depending on the relationship, but also more the energies, the masculine energy and the feminine energy. The masculine energy is, I have tasks to do, so I'm going to do one, I focus on it, I get it done, and I go on to the next thing. They can be because they're very focused, then it's very difficult to interrupt them. They have to focus on one thing and complete it. And then they feel as if for them, they've achieved it. Yes, done it. And they can move on to the next thing. The feminine energy is, and these are the words of the amazing Alison Armstrong, is we cannot focus on one thing at all. We have a diffuse awareness. And that's because we're having to focus on a number, well, not the word focus, but we have to be aware of a number of things, which is driven as instinct. It's not men can also have feminine energy, but predominantly in women, because instinctively we have that nature of looking after the children, looking after the home. And so therefore, this diffuse awareness allows us to keep an eye on the children while cooking a meal or cleaning the house or whatever, so that nobody gets in danger. And I think also going on from that is women are also much more emotional beings rather than the rational. And this is also implicated by our monthly cycle. So one minute we can be driven, we can get up and we can get lots of things done. The next minute we'll be wanting to connect with lots of people. Then we'll be starting to kind of look after ourselves a little bit more. And then we'll start to organize things. And then we kind of go, I don't want to touch the world right now. Just leave me alone. I want ice cream and my doobie for a day or two. So, and we go through that cycle every single month. And I think because we've been driven through the way we're raised in education, get up, achieve, get your SMART goals, go out and do there, achieve, we're actually lost connection to our bodies and how these emotions can turn up. And they're actually just turning up and we don't realize it. So it means that we can actually behave out of a normal behavior because of our hormones rather than actually something actually happening in the situation. So that's the other thing. And also we're driven to connection. So you may find women really wanting to interact with their masculine or male partner in the environment, and he's wanting to focus on work, and therefore it can cause a lot of unsettled or arguments because he's like, leave me alone. And she's going, but I just need to talk. So these are things that are just explaining the differences, but taking them into the context now of being at home is, if the woman is in the masculine energy and he's in the masculine energy, then it's going to cause a lot of uncomfortable circumstances, arguments, not being able to agree on things because there isn't that kind of balance. They're both wanting to get things done and it may not be the same things. So for her, it might be important for homeschooling the children, but for him, it's about making sure he's got all his work stuff done. So he's not partaking in homeschooling the children. She'll feel overwhelmed. She'll want more attention from him. He can't give it to her in that moment. And so it escalates and she'll start to feel not valued or heard or seen, which are three things that we need in a relationship. I hope that explains it.
I mean, interestingly, I think one of the questions that Byron and I get asked a lot is what it's like to both be entrepreneurs in a relationship. And I think some of what you just talked about in terms of how you would cope in a crisis is not dissimilar to what it's like, I guess, when you're starting a new business or a new project and there's that issue with that masculine energy and maybe the kind of attachment or detachment. What would be some of your tips for someone who was trying to start something new, to try and make sure both parties are on the same wavelength?
I think that is really being able to communicate with one another. Certainly it's almost like having meetings rather than just a general conversation. Arrange a time to have specific conversations about something so that you can agree points. Also just to, be more aware, depending, again, I'll keep referring to masculine and feminine energy rather than male and female. Is the masculine energy will listen for the problem and want to solve it. The woman needs to talk things through to get the solution. So if she's coming into a meeting or bringing the feminine energy into the meeting and has a problem, if he interrupts to bring a solution, it's not going to help her feel that valued and can I bring something to the project. She's going to feel, oh, you're the one that's got all the answers and you're undermining me. And it's not intentional, it's just you're rational, you problem solve. But women, naturally, we have to talk it through. We know how to solve, but we need to talk. We need to get things off our chest, basically, before we can actually come up with a solution. But as women can start to understand this more, they can come in their feminine energy to a meeting, but know exactly what to say, these are the problems, this is what I've thought of, can you help, let's help, and just come together to make a decision. So it is a conscious practice that we have to do rather than bombard him with so much conversation, because he's just going, what am I meant to remember? Which bit is important? Am I meant to remember that? I'm scared to ask in case I can't remember it, because he's not going to remember it all. So it's about the feminine energy in that meeting, saying, asking him to ask at the end, what do I need to remember? And the feminine energy will know. But again, it's just recognizing she has to talk it through before she gets there.
I feel like I would just instinctively, I feel like that would annoy me if I'm honest. If at the end of a conversation, he says, okay, so from that conversation, what do I need to remember? Because I feel that, and this might be an instinctive feeling, this might not be everyone's reality, but if you've come to a conversation with an agenda, you've gone through that conversation, if at the end the person says, what do I need to remember? It almost seems like they've not listened, or they've not really taken on board maybe the issues or the discussion. So is it, bless you.
Excuse me.
Is it a case of the man needing to take, male, female, whoever's got the energy that you require in this scenario, but is it a case of that person taking notes and therefore that would help them to remember the key characteristics? Or is it about the person who's called the conversation to have an agenda almost written? And I don't want to make it sound like a business meeting, but is it a case of being more, because men and women are so different, or because the energies could be so different, is it a case of just providing that clarity via a written document or something of sort?
Just to jump in for a moment.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you have perhaps some of the masculine traits, which is why I feel that you feel that way.
Yes.
You're quite a problem solver.
Yes.
But now I'm becoming more consciously aware of the differences. You also do like to talk things through and so on and so forth. So maybe but I agree, it's from your perspective.
Yes.
But
you don't think all women are necessarily.
Maybe it's not. I don't know. But an interesting point is what? No one gives us this school. No one tells us about these differences, which are clearly there. And we clearly understand there are differences. And as you're saying them, I'm like, oh yeah, she's like that. But you understand. You understand it by being in a relationship, and just you navigate your path and you find.
But some people don't, and I think that's where the coaching comes in, because you have to. Not everyone identifies there are distinct differences, or that there is this energy you talk about, the masculine, feminine energy. And so a man can have that feminine energy in times, I assume is the point. So how do you manage those energies? So Do you write it down?
I think you're both absolutely right. And for you as an entrepreneur, you've practiced. You know, this is what I want to go to the meeting. I've got a certain amount of time. These are the points I want to get across, but there's time to build in a discussion, and then we can come to a conclusion. So, you know, that's very much a business meeting. I'm not saying that that's all masculine energy at all, but you've come prepared. This is more a case of in the environment now, because we are working in very much a masculine energy environment. We leave the home, whereas it's compared to our ancestors years and years ago. We stayed at home, we raised the children, we had other women and children around about us, and that's where we got things off our chest. We had, you know, times I remember coffee mornings and sewing bees and all the rest of it. And if we're not having that, then we're offloading that information to predominantly our partner or the male person friend in our lives, that's when it can get overwhelming, because he is listening and going, I've heard this issue before, why is she raising it again? And it's emotional, because it's emotional that comes up rather than actually, this is the problem, I need to ask him to help me with the solution. So that's where one of the problems comes from. But you're right, we don't learn it, and this is one of the things I think is important to get out there, is that women need to have groups of people with feminine energy, because if you've ever joined a group of women and they're all talking, it's very, very confusing for a man to join that, because we're all talking over one another, the subjects change really quickly, and then we're kind of supporting one another, but he's going, but where's that conversation? And I've worked in a very male-orientated environment, and it's very few words. You know, they talk about, see you Saturday, and I'm going, where? What time? And they would see you, and I'm going, could somebody tell me a little bit more information, please? So we need more information, and it's very interesting when you start to understand this. It's if you think about it, and again, Alison Armstrong talks about this. If you go back to caveman times, you know, he's out hunting for meat and saber-toothed tigers, so he won't be chatting away in case the very dangerous animal sees them. And they'll use lots of sign language, you know, to capture these beasts. Whereas we're out in the meadows gathering, and so we talk so that the children can hear the mothers. We can, you know, chase all the little critters in the long grass, but we also know exactly where the tree with the berries that aren't going to kill the family are, and we know when they're ready to be picked. So we have to share that very, very detailed information with the other women that we trust in case something happens to me, and to go and get them before the birds or the little critters take them from us as a source of food. So that's where it all comes from. And our brains haven't really changed that much. But in the modern world, we can actually train ourselves to go, rather than offload everything that's going on for me, I need to think about before going into this meeting.
Yeah.
And that's in business, but coming into your personal life, it can be very different, because that's where sometimes you do want to go, I've had a bad day, woof,
Yeah.
and you just let it off, get it off your chest. And that's where we have to train the partner to go, just let her talk. Let her talk.
Yeah. I think what's so interesting about that is what you're talking about is essentially survival instinct. And survival instincts of males and females are different, because they've both got the same agenda, which is protect their family, their livelihood, and so on, but they just go at it in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And I think when we go back to kind of being a business couple, or a couple where one's an entrepreneur or both are entrepreneurs, I think what you said is interesting. A woman will come home and will want to talk about the problems. They want to kind of almost dump, this happened, that happened, this happened, good, bad, and different. And I think what I've experienced from being an entrepreneurial couple is when Byron has a problem in business, I want to talk about it. I want to ask him, what's happened? Tell me, talk to me, what is it? And he doesn't
say.
Yeah.
What did they say? Tell me everything.
Tell me something. And it's not just him. So speaking to other male entrepreneurs that we know, and they're like, well, I don't want to talk about the problem because if you can't solve it, what is the purpose of me divulging this information?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the difference. A woman wants to hear it, even if they can't solve it. They want to feel like you've divulged, you've talked about it. So how do we combat that? What should a woman do to accept that maybe he doesn't want to talk about it? And what should a man do to realize that the woman needs to talk about it? Where's the middle ground?
I've come up with a model which is actually knowing when to keep your lips sealed, and the model is LIPS. And it really is 4 things that you can think of, and I teach it to women to then explain to their partners, this is what I need you to do in this situation. And when I've taught it to men, they've gone, okay, yeah, I can do that. And it really is the L is just she needs to be heard. We need to be heard. It's so important. And therefore it's just listen. Just listen. And just don't feel you have to, the I is sort of like, don't interrupt. When she's talking, do not interrupt. And depending on how emotionally charged it is, but we know that you're going to interrupt to either go, you were talking about that and now you're I don't know the connection, or
Sarah,
I've got a problem. I know a solution. Can I? And no, just avoiding interruptions is a paramount. The P is really to kind of not to personalize it. Do not take it personally. And I get women to say that. I just need to get things off my chest. Please do not take it personally. Because when she's emotionally charged, we all know that there's a lot of other stuff that might just come up as well. And it's going back years. So, and he's going, I thought we dealt with this, So really it's about just sort of don't take it personally and just be present with her, and just say, this is going to be over, this is going to be over, and then we can have some time to discuss a solution. And the S at the end is to give her that space to talk. And also what may happen is if she does want to have a conversation, she'll go, not here, come with me, okay? Please avoid using the bedroom as a place to have these kind of discussions where there may be negativity and lots of emotional charged. But she may go to another room that's quieter because our environment's very noisy. And so if it's very noisy, we actually need to go somewhere to just say, right, let me have a conversation. So it's listen, please don't interrupt, avoid interruptions, don't personalize it, and just let her have the space, which is actually just being present, which is turn off your phone or leave it in another room. Don't think about the football match that's coming onto television, because we pick that up. We are very, very visual and we're very intuitive. So if we know that you're not present with us, we kind of go, I know myself, I just shut up. I just shut down and go, you're not listening. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. When you've got time for me, come back. I'm not wasting my energy. And I feel very hurt. But if I don't feel heard, and I think that's what happens with a lot of women, and therefore we store that. The last time you didn't listen, and it all comes up again. So don't take personally and just give us space, be present. Yeah. If it's a very heated conversation or she's very upset, she may be very exhausted afterwards. So that space is, honey, would you like a cup of tea, or can I get you something, or a hot bath, or whatever she might need just to rest. And then again, depending on the nature of the conversation, it could take 12 to 24 hours before you come back to the conversation and say, okay, what are we going to do about it? In business, that's obviously going to be different because there's usually a time constraint. So that's really for advice for the men. For women, I think it's important that we understand that he's looking for the problem. He wants to solve the problem. He can't take lots of information and detail It's problem, let's solve it, and let's take action on it. Yeah. So we have to, as you quite rightly suggested, before going into a meeting, even in our personal lives, okay, I've got this problem. I'm going to have a conversation for 15 minutes. Apparently that's as much as they can take. 15 minutes, and then we can come to a solution, and get on the phone to your girlfriends and just talk it out get the emotional stuff out, but make sure your girlfriends are in that feminine energy of listening. If they're in masculine energy, you're just hitting another barrier of talking to your partner as well.
So you used the word a couple of times about being present. I've heard this word being used many times. Can you tell us what you mean by that? What does that mean, being present?
It's about just being available for her, saying I'm here for you without verbalizing it. And sometimes it's almost remembering when you first met her. What is it that you liked about her? Just connecting with her, either your eyes or just being with her. It may be, if she likes being touched, you just hold her hand and saying, I'm here for you. What is it? I've got you. I've got you. I'm here to support you. Whatever it is, we'll get through that. Women need that reassurance. No matter how successful they are in business or whatever, we need that reassurance to say, I'm here. I'm here for you. And if they don't have that reassurance, it can make us again shut down or go over, get more frustrated because we don't feel that you're listening to us. Eye contact is also can be very important. She may not want to make eye contact back with you if it's an emotional thing, but gradually, if you make her feel safer, she'll start to come up and start to make that eye contact with you. It's about making us feel safe, because in the modern world, we don't actually like being vulnerable. But when we have got really difficult things to talk about and we want to talk them through with you, we have to be vulnerable.
Great. So another question. I feel like some of this you need to know before you get in a relationship, almost, to be consciously aware of the differences. But nobody teaches you these things. And I guess my question is, at what point do you seek a relationship coach or expert?
I would love it to be at the point you're ready to commit to somebody, but I am told that when you're at that point of committing to living together or getting married, there's so much hype into getting married, you're not actually thinking about, actually, not are we a match, but let's learn some really good, get a better understanding of one another before we make that commitment. So I feel it's generally at the pain stage of when I've met this person and it's not gone very well. I've met another person, same thing show up. That hasn't gone very well. I've met somebody else, and the same pattern just keeps turning up, which is really, I think, why we seek help and coaches in many areas of our life, is we have this repeat pattern. And a lot of our patterns may come from our parents. I never heard my parents argue except once. And then shortly after that, they got divorced. So for me, I don't want to argue in a relationship, or, but it's important for us to have these discussions because it kind of stretches us to get a better understanding of one another. But if we're not able to cope with them, then it can really kind of shut us down. So,
yeah.
So I guess, so now, is there I'm just trying to understand, because it's so difficult navigating a relationship, and we don't want to do it at the end, so we don't want to get a coach at the end. You're probably not conscious enough to do it in the beginning.
Yeah.
So then it's a case of, is it then a case of really just self-discovery? But then you don't do that until you're over a certain age. you don't start thinking about these things in a, pre 28.
No.
Yeah.
So what?
Also, it's probably fair to say, if a woman feels something, and this may be a slightly, it may not be all women, but if a woman feels something's going not right in the relationship, they're probably the first to seek out external information, whether that's from books or their friends, and sometimes that might not be the right people to go to get information from. But I wonder if men seek out that.
So I don't think a man's ever gonna, when he goes, I'm not gonna say it like blanket, but majority of men of a certain age, when they go to the bookshop, are probably not going to pick out a book based on relationships, right?
But women
but it's so important, because it can save you a lot of time, a lot of stress, and it could be very good or detrimental, the mistakes you're making and so on. It's almost like the psychology of relationships. Yeah. Is there no book? There must be books on this.
There are books, yes, and of course there's plenty of programs out there. And I think it's also different stages of our life that happen. For women, it will start much, much earlier than men because of our biological clock. So from the age of 15 in some cultures, it's like, oh, babies, I need to have a family, I need to, and so that's when we maybe start to seek our ideal partner. But for men, the psychology is that your first and foremost thing is to go out and get enough to provide for your family. So you're more likely to work longer, still have fun and meet girls and, be in relationships, but not to necessarily commit until you said probably about late 20s, 30s. By this time, a woman can get quite anxious because she's only really got 10 more years or so. Obviously, it's now extended with medical treatments, but she's only got 10 more years. And what happens if that relationship doesn't work? Because maybe depending what's happened with her parents or other family members, their relationships haven't worked. So it's then starts to get very, very deep rooted. So what I would like to do is to be able to reach out to people to say, at the point you're ready to commit, I'm not here to say to you, they're the right person for you. That's entirely up to you. But how about come and learn some tools to make it a more loving and lasting and, fun and passionate relationship, but also the impact that can have on your children if you are in that kind of level of a relationship from the beginning, and teach them to how to communicate with the opposite energy or sex from a much, much younger age. Because even communicating with boys is different from communicating with girls. You have to, if a boy is playing with Lego and really busy trying to get something built, you can't just say, hey, come on, supper time. He'll ignore you. To him, he's not finished yet. Where is how long do can I interrupt for a second? How long do you think you're going to be? How about 10 minutes, and then we'll have supper, and then you can go back to it. He might be reluctant, but he knows he can go back to it to finish it. Whereas with a girl, she might go, yeah, okay, and just get up, and she's not particularly worried about finishing the task as such. So
I have two questions for you. So the first, I guess, is when we speak to entrepreneurial couples, I think the toughest thing I think most of them face is two things. The first is, if one decides to become an entrepreneur, they both had full-time jobs, one decides to become an entrepreneur, and let's assume for this case it's the man that decides to become an entrepreneur and the woman suddenly becomes the breadwinner. The biggest issue seems to be that the woman feels that she's a breadwinner, that the man doesn't have time for her, the man has changed his attention to the business, energy, the focus of energies has changed. And maybe that the woman now has to, financially take care of the family's needs. How do we work? How do we make that work? Because I think sometimes the man feels emasculated because the woman's taking care of the money and everything else, and the woman feels irritated because she's taking care of the money and everything else, and the man is not so good at communicating what's happening in the business. So how do we help couples like that?
I feel that probably the best way forward for that is excuse me.
And it's complicated. I'm sure it changes.
Yes, and it will be unique to each couple. And I think, yes, finances can be something that makes or breaks a relationship, especially if that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. But it's about making sure that, okay, here's the money we need for the household, yeah, and she contributes to that. And then whatever he's earning, or if he needs extra money to do whatever, then she says, okay, here's your allowance, let's say. I don't like that word, but let's say here's a sum of money for you until you can start to show things are working. And then she's still got her own any remaining money, which is hers to invest. I think it's very much that. And when he's able to contribute, they put into the joint pot, so there is a sense of both of you are coping with it. I think if it really becomes about the money, then you've lost the focus of what the relationship's about. Because hopefully there's been a conversation that's what he's going to do.
That's the important part of it. It's the communication. Right? If that's where I think the issue lies, is because one hasn't articulated that, look, this is their financial position.
They're starting this business, it's what's going to happen.
And because everyone's filled with hope and optimism, and they're going to become a billionaire with their business after one day, and so on. And I think that's the key, right? And you hit it on head, is that communication. If you don't communicate that, look, I'm just starting my business, with this is the vision, it's the hope, because it never goes to plan. It takes longer than we always plan for. Communication. You've got to have that conversation.
And I think the other thing that when I speak to most women whose husbands have decided to start a business and so on, is sex. So the man's busy, he's not interested, and I think the intimacy element, and it's not just about the sex, but the intimacy element becomes a problem, or at least the woman feels as a problem. Is there something that women should be saying or thinking, or men should be considering in that scenario, so that both parties get what they need from the relationship?
It's a great question, and it comes back to creating the polarity and the energy of masculine and feminine energy. If you're both entrepreneurs, then there will be a high level of masculinity in your work environments. Even if she's working full time, and he's an entrepreneur, again, she may be in very much in a male or a masculine energy environment, like finance or business or whatever. It's still very masculine. So the responsibility is for both. For her is self-care, completely and utterly, to really, really kind of step out of her masculine energy and transition on her way back to work, back from work, so that she can come to the house and be in her feminine energy. Now, there's so many ways to do that, and each woman is different, but it can be simple things like putting on your favorite song on your headphones on the way back from work in the underground, or if you're in the car, sing your heart to your heart's consent, whether you're a bad singer or not. Get home, even if you're just putting on relaxed clothes, just put some sexy underwear on underneath. And it makes you feel good. It makes you, and when you light up, he goes, "Wow, what's happening with her?" We light each other up. We wait for the other one to light us up, but we actually have to do it ourselves. And it can just be a smile. It can just be a glint in your eye, going, "Haha, you don't know what I've got on underneath this," And it may seem like girly, but it's actually how we show up with our feminine energy. And if we're coming back with masculine and he's coming back with masculine,
doesn't work.
Yeah, doesn't work. For him, I think it's important for both of them, is to understand the language of love. There's 5 types of language of love, and if she wants to be touched and he likes to hear it, and he's saying to her, "Hey honey, I love you," or "You look great," and she's going, "Yeah, right." And he's going, "Why do I bother saying it? It's not making a difference." It could be she needs that hug. It could be she needs you to just grab her hand quietly when you come in the door. It could be, you know, you need to have that 90 seconds of just eye contact. That it's actually really truly understanding what that is. And that's something that we lose touch with, because we pass on the language of love that we want to the other person, but it may not be their language of love. So there's saying it, touching it, quality time, doing tasks for one another, and gifts. So if he brings the flowers home or the chocolates home and she goes, yeah, thanks, and he's going, oh my goodness.
You can't win.
But it's the wrong thing, and you know, I've put a lot of, you know, people I've dated off because I've said, whatever you do, don't bring me gifts. And he's gone, right, okay, what? But it's just not my, I'm just kind of putting it out there. Don't spend your money, don't waste your money. And it's not, it wasn't that as a case I should have followed it up. Instead, you could do this or this, and I'll absolutely be there, you know, love you to bits, or, you know, really appreciate that. But I was just going, forget the gifts, you know, it doesn't really help. So it's about
understand your own love language, and then explain that to the other person, and understand each other's.
And also to go back to this question at the end, especially for women, one is self-care, two, this is what I need. Otherwise the man's guessing about what we need, and of course we're guessing what their need, and that's just can be quite disastrous. So it's about us discovering what we need and then being able to ask it. So when we do ask for it, again, it's a conversation. It can sometimes be uncomfortable because it's new and uncertain, and he goes, oh, something else I need to remember. And one of the things is at the end of that conversation is, how can I help you to remember? So we're giving him prompts. And, you know, I heard a story of a lady who was in a relationship, and her husband or partner traveled quite extensively. And she said, until I knew he had landed, I couldn't sleep. Whether he was arriving the next morning, but I couldn't sleep until I knew he had landed. So what she would do is, when he was on the plane, she would send him a message saying, just to remember, can you just message me as soon as you land? So when he got off the plane, turned on his phone, hey, have you landed? And he would just do it there and then. But she had to explain to him that, I don't sleep, I worry. I know you're okay, but I have to hear that you're okay. And as soon as I got that,
yeah.
You know, we're like, yeah, we forgot. So you have to,
which is the strategies, right? The communication strategies.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent, awesome. Thank you. That has been
insightful.
Absolutely. So, is there any final points you would like to send to the world who may need either a relationship coach or advice for a successful and happy relationship?
I think is as you know, you've been saying, is don't leave it till it's too painful. Just really kind of go, there's something wrong. Who can I reach out and speak to? And, you know, reach out to maybe a coach, because it's not that we're saying come and have coaching with us. We may be able to say, might not be the best person in that situation, but I know somebody else, or I can refer you to a course or a book. So don't feel that, you know, coaching is great, but it may not be, you know, sort of financially viable at this stage to, you know, go for coaching sessions. But just reach out and have that conversation with somebody who wants to help, and maybe have a whole bag of resources to share with you, to say, try this, come back to me, let me know, and have that somebody that you can talk to and really get some insights with.
Excellent.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you or reach out to you if they need to do so?
I am on Facebook at LJM Coaching, Instagram at LJM_coaching, and I have a website which is www.louisemacfarlane.com.
Super. Thank you so much, Louise, again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope you found this discussion to be insightful. You know, relationships are one of those things that are truly important to every person. So why not spend some time working on it? So thank you. He's got his pen. He's been taking notes. You do that well. You're a good husband, so you didn't need to take notes. You do strive for perfection. There's always improvements that can be made. So thank you very much for tuning in. I've been Bianca.
And I'm Byron.
And Self-Made
is Success.
Bye.